Welcome back to the deep dive. Ever really stop to think about what's going on inside your walls? Like under the drywall or even, I don't know, under the hood of your car?
Hmm. Not particularly. Is there a point to this?
Well, I'll be honest, I hadn't either. Not until I learned about insulating tube winders.
Insulating tube winders.
You got it. And that's our deep dive today. We're going deep with some career guides from RoleCatcher, really fascinating stuff.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What do these insulating tube winders actually do?
Right. So picture this. You've got these giant rolls of insulating material, like massive ribbons.
Okay, got that. Big rolls of insulation.
The winder, that's what they're called, they feed that material into a machine. It's like this whole process, shaping it into a tube. And we're not just talking any tube. These things have to be precise.
So they're like operating heavy machinery.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just pushing buttons either. RoleCatcher actually calls them maestros, which I thought was a little much. Yeah, but the more I read, it kind of fits. They're fine-tuning the tension, the speed, even thinking about how the material itself, like fiberglass or foam, is going to behave. It's a lot.
I can see that. So where does this maestro work? What's their environment like?
Think more like organized chaos. Definitely not some quiet workshop.
Okay, so more of a factory setting then.
Exactly. RoleCatcher's really clear about the safety gear, ear protection, the whole 9 yards. It can get loud, dusty, you name it.
Not for everyone, that's for sure. So I'm imagining it's a pretty solitary job, right? Just them and the machine.
You'd think so, and in a lot of ways it is, but RoleCatcher also really emphasizes the teamwork aspect. Like when a machine goes down, which, let's be honest, happens.
Right. Machines break down.
Then it's all hands on deck. The winder has to be able to communicate what's going on clearly to the supervisors, the engineers, whoever can fix it.
Makes sense. So it's not just technical skills, but communication and problem solving too.
Exactly. High pressure when you think about it, especially because these tubes are going into things that need to be safe and reliable.
Okay. Yeah, now I'm starting to see it. It's not just about making tubes. It's about making tubes that work and that last. There's a lot riding on their ability to get it right. But every job has its ups and downs. What does RoleCatcher say are the good parts of this career path?
Well, for one, autonomy. You're the one in control of that machine. You're the one making sure the quality's there. And that's got to feel good, you know? You're building something.
Right. I can see that being a real plus for the right person.
And here's something else, specialization. As you get more experience, you can really focus in on winding with certain materials, like, let's say, fiberglass.
Fiberglass, yeah, I know that's common in construction.
Right. Because it's great for insulation, heat resistance, but also, let's be honest, it's itchy, so those safety precautions we talked about,
Yeah.
extra important when you're dealing with fiberglass.
Makes sense. Speaking of, what other downsides did RoleCatcher mention? Besides the potential for itchiness, that is. Well, one thing RoleCatcher's upfront about, it can get pretty repetitive. You're using the same skills, same kind of machine every day.
So not a job for someone who gets bored easily then.
Not at all, no.
No.
And it takes real attention to detail, too, because if a tube isn't wound right, big consequences.
Oh, I bet. Like, what kind of consequences are we talking?
Think about it. A pipe bursts inside your wall because the insulation wasn't good enough. Or even worse, like a car fails inspection because of a problem with the wiring, and it traces back to, you guessed it, the insulation.
Whoa. Okay, suddenly I'm feeling a lot more respectful of the tubes in my house.
Right. It's more responsibility than you'd think. And RoleCatcher, they actually have this whole section about how your career can grow, different stages from beginner to like senior winder.
Okay, now that's interesting. What's that progression look like?
So you start as an assistant, basically learning from the pros. Then you move up to like a junior winder. You're more on your own, setting up the machines, running them.
So you're not just putting material in, there's real problem solving going on.
Tons of it. And you get better, you become a senior winder, maybe you're even mentoring the new folks, working with engineers. RoleCatcher even says some people, they get really specialized in a certain material.
Oh, that's cool. Like you could be the fiberglass guru or, I don't know, the foam expert.
Exactly. It's a whole career path, not just a job, which surprised me. It's easy to think, oh, factory work, but there's real skill here.
Yeah, and we haven't even touched on the whole technology side of it. RoleCatcher talks about how automation's changing things. So are these winders, are they going to be replaced by robots?
That's the thing. Not replace, but they got to adapt. RoleCatcher says they'll need to be good with programming, fixing automated stuff. It's almost like they're conducting an orchestra, but instead of musicians, it's robots.
That's a great way to put it. But I bet that's a tough transition for some people, right? Going from hands-on to, like, high tech.
For sure. That's why RoleCatcher talks about all these resources, like online classes, certifications, even AI tools to help you find the right job. They've thought of everything.
Wow, that's impressive. Okay, so we've covered the skills, the tech, but what about personality? Who does well in this kind of job?
Well, based on all this, I'd say someone who likes working with their hands, who cares about being precise, who's a hard worker, and maybe, just maybe, someone who can find the beauty in a perfectly wound tube.
Someone who sees the art in the unexpected. I like it.
And someone who gets that even jobs that seem ordinary, they can have a huge impact.
Very true. Okay, so we've talked about the responsibility, but let's break it down even further. What kind of real-world impact are we talking about here? It's kind of like that saying, right? The most ordinary things are actually the most extraordinary, but instead of like a tree or something, it's, well, a tube.
And it's bigger than just the tubes themselves. Think about all the things that need them, all the industries, construction, cars, electronics. It's a lot when you really start thinking about it.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Suddenly that insulation roll in my garage is looking a lot more impressive.
Right. It's easy to forget, but someone made that happen. And RoleCatcher, they really emphasize this. As technology gets more advanced, those skills, knowing how to make those tubes, even more important.
Because someone's got to be in charge of the robots, making sure they're winding those tubes, right?
Exactly. And that they're using the right stuff. Remember how we were talking about specializing in different types of insulation?
Mm-hmm.
RoleCatcher, they go deep on that, how every material, it's got its own, like, personality, its own challenges.
Yeah, like how winding foam is practically its own art form. It's so tricky to work with. Who knew there was so much to it?
It really shows you there's always more to a job than you think. Even something like insulating tube winding. You can learn and grow, become a real expert, maybe even find a little bit of, dare I say, artistry in it.
And let's not forget, it's a lot of responsibility, too. Yeah, those tubes might be hidden, but they're keeping our houses warm, our cars running.
The unsung heroes of manufacturing,
Did
working behind the scenes, making modern life possible.
I like that. Well said. Well, on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive. A surprisingly fascinating one into the world of insulating tube winders.
It's been great, really exploring this career path. I never would have thought about it this way before.
Me neither. And to everyone listening, next time you see an insulating tube winder in action, take a second to really appreciate what goes into making those tubes. You might be surprised what you discover.
You never know.
Until next time, everyone, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.